They made me kneel in front of champagne glasses and polished silverware, in front of men who'd bought their wives like trophies, in front of my own son. They made me kneel on that cold marble floor and scrub wine from expensive shoes like I was nothing. My husband's hand on my shoulder, his voice calm and cutting. Clean it properly, Clara. 30 years of swallowing silence, 30 years of disappearing, and then a voice I hadn't heard in decades cut through the room like thunder. Take your hands off her. Everything I'd buried came flooding back. Stay with me until the end. Hit like and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. I should have known something was wrong when Richard insisted I wear the beige dress. Not the navy one I'd picked out, the one that actually fit. Not the charcoal grey that made me feel less invisible. The beige one. The one that washed me out completely, made me look like a shadow against the wallpaper. You'll blend in better, he'd said that morning, not even looking up from his phone. Tonight's about Ethan and Melissa, not you. I stood in our bedroom, his bedroom, really. I just slept there, holding both dresses. The navy one still had the tags on. I'd bought it 3 weeks ago with money from my mother's inheritance, the small amount Richard couldn't touch. It was the first piece of clothing I'd chosen for myself in years. I hung it back in the closet and put on the beige. That's what 30 years of marriage does to you. It teaches you which battles aren't worth fighting. It teaches you that your opinion on your own clothing is one of them. The engagement dinner was at L'Etoile, the kind of restaurant where the menu doesn't list prices because if you have to ask, you don't belong. Richard had reserved the private dining room, 14 place settings, crystal everything, flowers that probably cost more than my grocery budget for a month. Smile more, Richard whispered as we walked in. His hand was on my lower back, but it wasn't affectionate, it was a warning. And for God's sake, don't talk about your painting nonsense if anyone asks what you do. My painting nonsense. The watercolors I did in the garage when he was at work, the only thing that still felt like mine. I won't, I said quietly. You won't what? I won't embarrass you. He didn't respond. He never did when I said exactly what he wanted to hear. The guests arrived in waves of expensive cologne and competent laughter. Richard's business partners, Melissa's parents, old money, the kind that doesn't need to prove anything. Her father owned half the commercial real estate downtown. Her mother had that specific type of beauty that comes from dermatologists and personal trainers and never having worked a day in her life. And then there was me in my beige dress carrying a tray of champagne glasses because Richard had waved away the waiter. Clara can handle it, he'd said. She likes to be useful. I didn't correct him. I just picked up the tray. Melissa's mother, Genevieve, took a glass without looking at me. Richard, you've raised such an impressive son. Stanford and now the firm. You must be so proud. We are, Richard said. Not I am, we. As if he was reminding everyone I existed, but barely. Ethan stood across the room with Melissa, his arm around her waist. My son, 26 years old, so handsome it hurt to look at him sometimes. Dark hair, strong jaw, eyes that had always been too serious for his age. He looked like the man I'd loved before Richard, but nobody knew that except me. Mom, Ethan caught my eye and smiled. It was genuine, warm. You okay? I nodded, balancing the tray. Perfect, sweetheart. Melissa whispered something in his ear and he laughed. She was beautiful, blonde, effortless, the kind of woman who looked expensive even in jeans. She was perfect for him, everyone said so. But when she looked at me, her smile never quite reached her eyes. Clara, come here. Richard's voice cut across the room. I set the tray down and walked over. He was standing with Melissa's father, Trevor, and 2 other men I didn't recognize. They all had that same look, success worn like armor. Trevor was just saying how important family values are, Richard said. I was telling him how you've dedicated your life to supporting Ethan and me. Isn't that right? It wasn't a question. Yes, I said. She gave up everything for us, Richard continued, and there was something in his voice that made my skin crawl. Pride? No, ownership. Her career, her dreams, all of it. Trevor nodded approvingly. That's rare these days. Women want everything: career, family, independence. They don't understand sacrifice anymore. I felt something twist in my chest. I wanted to say that I hadn't given up anything. I'd had it taken, piece by piece, year by year, until I couldn't remember what I'd wanted in the first place. But I didn't say that. I smiled and said, family comes first. Richard squeezed my shoulder too hard. Dinner started at 8. I sat at the far end of the table, next to Richard's assistant, and a woman I'd never met, who spent the entire first course talking about her vacation home in Tuscany. I nodded in the right places, laughed when I was supposed to, and tried not to notice how far away Ethan seemed. The wine came out, expensive bottles, labels I couldn't pronounce. Richard stood to make a toast. To Ethan and Melissa, he began, raising his glass. 2 brilliant young people starting their lives together. I couldn't be prouder of the man my son has become. My son. Not our son. I kept my face neutral. And to Melissa, Richard continued, turning to her. Welcome to the family. You're getting a good man. I made sure of that. Everyone laughed. I didn't. Melissa stood up to respond, and that's when it happened. Her sleeve caught the stem of her wine glass. Red wine, something expensive, something dark as blood, tipped over and splashed across the white tablecloth. Drops hit Richard's sleeve, his pants, his shoes. The room went silent. Oh my God, Melissa gasped. I'm so sorry. It's fine, Richard said, but his voice was tight. A waiter rushed over with a napkin, but Richard held up his hand. Clara, I looked up. Come here and clean this up. I blinked. The waiter. Now, Clara. Every eye in the room turned to me. I stood up slowly, my legs shaking. I could feel Ethan staring, but I didn't look at him. I walked to Richard's end of the table. It's just wine, I said quietly. The staff can... I said, clean it up. His tone left no room for argument. I took the napkin from the waiter's hand and bent down to blot the wine from Richard's shoes. Not like that, Richard said. You're just spreading it around. I was on my knees now, on the cold marble floor, surrounded by 14 pairs of expensive shoes and eyes that looked everywhere except at me. Use water, Richard instructed, and do it properly. Someone handed me a glass of water. I poured a little on the napkin and scrubbed at the stain on his leather shoes. My hands were shaking. You're getting it on my pants now, Richard said. Honestly, Clara, can't you do anything right? I heard Melissa's mother murmur something to Trevor. I heard someone clear their throat, but nobody said anything. Nobody stopped him. I scrubbed harder, my vision blurring. This was my life. This was what I'd become. And then, take your hands off her. The voice was deep, commanding, and completely unfamiliar. I froze. Richard's hand, which had been resting on my shoulder, pressing down, keeping me in place, lifted. I looked up. A man stood in the doorway of the private dining room. Tall, maybe 6'2", with silver grey hair and a face that was all sharp angles and controlled fury. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than my car, and he was staring at Richard like he wanted to break him in half. Who the hell are you? Richard demanded. The man didn't answer him. He was looking at me. And then he said a name I hadn't heard in 27 years. Ara. My heart stopped. Nobody had called me that since. Victor? The word came out like a breath, like a ghost. His expression shifted. Anger melting into something else. Recognition. Shock. My God, he said softly. It is you. Richard stepped forward. I asked you a question. Who are you and what are you doing in a private event? Victor finally looked at him. Victor Hale. I own this restaurant and I don't allow abuse in my establishments. Abuse? Richard laughed. I was asking my wife to clean up a spill. You were humiliating her. That's none of your business. Actually, Victor said, his voice dropping to something dangerous, it became my business the second you put your hands on her. The room was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Ethan stood up. What's going on? Victor ignored him. He walked toward me, not Richard, me, and held out his hand. Get up, Ara, he said gently. You don't kneel for anyone. I stared at his hand, at the silver watch on his wrist, at the scar on his knuckle from the time he'd punched a wall, defending me at a college party so many years ago I'd convinced myself it was a dream. "Clara," Richard said sharply. "Sit back down." I didn't move. "Clara!" Louder now. Victor's hand was still extended. I took it. He pulled me to my feet and the world tilted. I was standing now eye level with his chest, and I could smell his cologne, cedar, and something else. Something that dragged me back to being 21 and reckless and convinced that love was enough. "Thank you," I whispered. "Are we done here?" Richard's voice was ice. "Because I'd like to get back to my son's engagement dinner." "No," Victor said, "we're not done." He turned to the room, to all those silent faces who'd watched me scrub wine from my husband's shoes without saying a word. "This woman," Victor said, his voice carrying, "is worth more than every single person in this room combined. And if any of you think otherwise, you can leave." Nobody moved. Richard's face went red. "How dare you? How dare I?" Victor stepped closer to him. "How dare you treat her like a servant in public in front of your son?" "She's my wife. She's a human being." Ethan was moving now, coming around the table. "Mom, who is this guy?" I couldn't answer. I couldn't breathe. Victor was still staring at Richard. "You have no idea who she is, do you? What she gave up, what she was before you." "Before I what?" Richard challenged. "Before you erased her." The words hung in the air like smoke. Melissa's father cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should all take a breath." "I knew her," Victor said, and now he was looking at me again. His eyes, God, his eyes were the same. Dark brown, almost black, with that intensity that used to make me forget how to speak. 27 years ago, she was brilliant, an artist. She was going to change the world. "Well," Richard said coldly, "she didn't. Because of you. She chose me." "Did she?" Victor's voice was quiet now, deadly. "Or did you just happen to be there when she was scared and alone and pregnant with—" "Stop!" My voice came out like a crack of thunder. Everyone froze. I pulled my hand from Victor's and stepped back. "Just stop," I said again. "Please." Ethan was staring at me. "Mom, what is he talking about? Pregnant with what? With me?" I closed my eyes. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. Not here. Not tonight. "Ethan, sweetheart, is he saying Dad isn't my real father?" The question cut through me like glass. Richard moved fast. He grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the door. "We're leaving. Now." "Let go of her," Victor said. "This is my family." "Let go." Something in Victor's voice made Richard's hand loosen. Just for a second, just enough. I yanked my arm free. "I'm not leaving," I said. Richard stared at me. "What did you just say?" I said, "I'm not leaving." For the first time in 30 years, I watched my husband's face register genuine shock. "Clara, get in the car." "No." "You're making a scene." "Good." Ethan stepped between us. "Someone needs to tell me what the hell is going on, right now." I looked at my son, my beautiful, serious son, who looked so much like Victor it hurt, and I made a choice. "Your father," I said slowly, "is not the man who raised you." Melissa gasped. Ethan went pale. Richard lunged forward, but Victor was faster. He stepped in front of me, his body a wall between us. "Don't," Victor warned. "This is insane," Richard spat. "Clara, you've lost your mind." "His name is Victor Hale," I continued, my voice shaking, but clear. "We met in college. We were together for 3 years, and when I found out I was pregnant—" I couldn't finish. Victor turned to look at me. His expression was unreadable. "I was 21, I whispered. I was terrified. You'd just left for Singapore for that fellowship, and I didn't know how to reach you, and my parents said I'd ruin your life if I told you, and Richard was there, and he said he'd take care of us, and I thought—" "You thought what?" Victor's voice was rough. "I thought I was doing the right thing. By lying to me for 27 years, by protecting you, and I didn't need protection, Ara. I needed you." Ethan made a noise, something between a laugh and a sob. "This isn't real. This can't be real." Melissa grabbed his arm. "Ethan, maybe we should go." "Don't touch me." He pulled away from her. "Just everyone stop touching me." He looked at Richard. "Did you know? The whole time, did you know you weren't my real father? Richard's jaw clenched. I am your real father. I raised you. I paid for your schools, your clothes, your life. That makes me your father. That makes you a liar. Ethan, you let me call you Dad for 26 years and you knew. Richard's composure finally cracked. What was I supposed to do? Tell you your mother was a whore who got knocked up by some artist she barely knew? Victor moved so fast I didn't see it coming. 1 second he was standing next to me. The next his fist was connecting with Richard's jaw. Richard went down hard. Chaos erupted. Melissa screamed. Trevor jumped up. The waiters rushed in. But I just stood there, staring at my husband sprawled on the floor, blood trickling from his lip. And I felt nothing. No guilt, no fear, nothing. We're done, I said quietly. Richard looked up at me shocked. What? I want a divorce. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. I turned to Ethan. He was staring at me like I was a stranger. I'm sorry, I said. I'm so sorry I lied to you. I'm sorry I was a coward. I'm sorry for all of it. Sorry doesn't fix this, he said. I know. He shook his head and walked out. Melissa hesitated for a moment, then followed him. The other guests were already gathering their things, whispering, avoiding eye contact. This would be all over their social circles by morning. I didn't care. Richard pulled himself up, leaning against the table. You'll regret this, Clara. You'll come crawling back within a week. You have nothing without me. You are nothing without me. I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized I'd been afraid of the wrong thing all these years. I hadn't been afraid of leaving him. I'd been afraid of finding out who I was without him. Maybe, I said, but I'd rather be nothing on my own than everything to you. I walked out of the dining room, Victor behind me. The restaurant was still open, the main dining area full of people who had no idea what had just exploded in the private room. I made it to the lobby before my legs gave out. Victor caught me before I hit the floor. I've got you, he said, and God help me, I believed him. We sat on the bench outside the restaurant for a long time. Neither of us spoke. The city moved around us, cars, people, noise, but we were in a bubble of silence. Finally, Victor said, "Why didn't you tell me?" I tried. My voice was hoarse. I called your apartment 3 times. I wrote letters, but you were already gone, and your number was disconnected, and I didn't know where you were staying in Singapore. My roommate was supposed to forward my mail. He didn't. Victor exhaled slowly. My parents' number was in the phone book. You could have called them. Your parents hated me. They didn't, Victor, your mother told me to my face that I was a distraction, that I was going to ruin your career before it even started. He was quiet. When I found out I was pregnant, I continued. I was 3 months along. I'd been throwing up every morning, and I thought it was stress from finals. By the time I took the test, you'd been gone for 6 weeks. You should have told me anyway. And then what? You fly back, give up the fellowship, and we play house at 21. We were broke, Victor. We were kids. We were in love. Love doesn't pay for diapers. He turned to look at me. You really think I would have cared about money? I think you would have cared about throwing away your future. My future was with you. The words hit me like a physical blow. Richard offered to marry me, I said quietly. He was older, stable, had a job. He said he'd love the baby like his own. He said he'd take care of us. And my parents, God, my parents were so relieved. They kept saying I was lucky, that Richard was a good man, that I was getting a second chance. At what? At not being the family disappointment. Victor stood up and paced to the curb. I looked for you. I blinked. What? After the fellowship ended, I came back to the States and went to your apartment. You were gone. Your roommate said you'd gotten married and moved. She wouldn't tell me where. I asked her not to. Why? Because I knew if I saw you again, I'd fall apart, and I couldn't afford to fall apart. I had a baby. My baby. Yes. He turned around. Does he hate you? Probably. And Richard? Definitely. Good. Victor sat back down next to me. He should. He stole 27 years from us. I gave them to him, I corrected. I made the choice. You were 21 and terrified. I was a coward. You were brave enough to raise a child alone. I wasn't alone. I had Richard. Victor's expression darkened. You think that's the same thing? I didn't answer. We sat in silence until the night air turned cold. What happens now? Victor finally asked. I don't know, I admitted. I've never not known what happens next. Richard always decided. Where we lived, what I did, who we saw. I haven't made a real choice in 30 years. You made one tonight. I had, hadn't I? I'd chosen to stand up, to stop kneeling. I need to go home, I said, even though the thought of walking back into that house made me sick. I need to pack some things. I'll drive you. You don't have to. Ara. He said my old name softly, like a prayer. Let me drive you. So I did. The house was dark when we pulled up. Richard's car wasn't in the driveway. He's probably at his club, I said, telling everyone his version of the story. Victor parked but didn't turn off the engine. Do you want me to come in? No, I need to do this alone. He nodded but didn't look convinced. I got out of the car and walked up the driveway. The house looked the same as it always did. Perfect lawn, perfect hedges, perfect everything. A museum of a life I'd never actually lived. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The silence was deafening. I walked upstairs to the bedroom and pulled out a suitcase. I didn't pack much. Some clothes, toiletries, my mother's jewelry box, the watercolors from the garage. On my way out, I stopped in Ethan's old room. It was exactly as he'd left it when he moved out for college. Trophies on the shelves, posters on the walls, a life frozen in time. I found the photo album I'd made him when he turned 16. I flipped through the pages. Birthday parties, soccer games, graduations. Richard was in most of them, his arm around Ethan's shoulders, smiling for the camera. But if you look closely, you could see it. The distance in Ethan's eyes, the way he never quite leaned into Richard's touch. He'd known, I realized. Maybe not consciously, but somewhere deep down, he'd always known something wasn't right. I closed the album and left it on his bed. Then I walked out of that house and didn't look back. Victor was still waiting in the car. Where to? He asked. I should have said a hotel or my sister's house, anywhere neutral. Instead, I said anywhere but here. He drove. We ended up at an all-night diner on the edge of town. The kind of place with vinyl booths and waitresses who'd seen everything and judged nothing. We ordered coffee. Neither of us touched it. I need to know something, Victor said finally. Okay. Did you love him, Richard? Did you ever actually love him? I thought about it, really thought about it. No, I said. I respected him. I was grateful to him. But love? No, I reserved that for someone else. Past tense? I met his eyes. You tell me. The air between us shifted, charged. I tried to move on, Victor said quietly. After you, I tried dating, relationships. I even got engaged once about 10 years ago. What happened? I called off the wedding 3 days before because I realized I was trying to marry someone who made me forget you, and that wasn't fair to either of us. Victor, I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty, he interrupted. I'm telling you because you need to know that what we had wasn't just some college fling. It was real. It is real. Tears stung my eyes. It's been 27 years. I don't care. We're different people now. Are we? He leaned forward. Because when I walked into that dining room and saw you on your knees, I felt the same rage I felt when your father called you a failure. The same protectiveness I felt when you had panic attacks before exams. The same love I felt every single day we were together. You can't possibly still love you. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Ara, I never stopped. The confession hung between us like a grenade. I have a son who hates me, I said. A husband who's going to make the divorce a nightmare. No job, no money of my own, no idea how to be a person outside of being someone's wife. I'm a mess, Victor. So why would you want this? Want me? He reached across the table and took my hand. His fingers were warm, solid, real. Because, he said simply. You're you. I broke. 27 years of holding everything together, and I shattered like glass. I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. I cried for the girl I'd been, the one who'd been so full of dreams and possibility. I cried for the years I'd lost, the life I'd given up. I cried for Ethan, for the lies I'd told him, for the truth that would change everything. And Victor held my hand through all of it. When I finally stopped, the diner was empty except for us and a tired waitress refilling salt shakers. I don't know what happens next, I said, my voice wrecked. Neither do I, Victor admitted, but we'll figure it out. Together? He smiled. If you'll have me. I thought about Richard, about the divorce, the scandal, the fallout. I thought about Ethan and whether he'd ever forgive me. I thought about starting over at 48 with nothing but a suitcase and a man I used to know. And I thought for the first time in 30 years, what do I want? Yeah, I said, together. We left the diner as the sun started to rise. Victor drove me to a hotel, a nice one, the kind with room service and soft sheets, and walked me to the door. Get some sleep, he said. We'll talk tomorrow. But before he could leave, I grabbed his arm. Thank you, I said, for seeing me, for remembering me. Ara, he said softly, you're impossible to forget. He left and I was alone. I lay on the hotel bed and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere across town, Ethan was probably still awake, trying to process the fact that his entire life had been a lie. Richard was probably planning his counterattack, consulting lawyers, preparing to destroy me in every way possible. But in that moment, in that quiet hotel room with the sunrise bleeding through the curtains, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Hope. Tomorrow I'd start rebuilding. I'd face Ethan. I'd fight Richard. I'd figure out who Clara Whitmore was supposed to be when nobody was telling her how to exist. But tonight, I just breathed. And it felt like coming home. I woke up to 17 missed calls from Richard and a text from Ethan that just said, "Don't contact me." The hotel room was too bright, too clean, too quiet. I'd slept in my clothes. My face in the bathroom mirror looked like someone had taken an eraser to it. Blurred, undefined, barely there. I ordered coffee from room service because I didn't know what else to do. The woman who brought it didn't make eye contact. Maybe she knew. Maybe everyone knew by now. Richard's 18th call came while I was staring at the coffee. I answered. "You have 48 hours to come home," he said. No greeting, no pretense. "I'm not coming home." "Then you'll have nothing. I'll make sure of it." "You can't." "I own that house, Clara. I own the cars. The bank accounts are in my name. Your credit cards? Mine. That pathetic art studio in the garage, I'm having it cleared out today." My hand tightened on the phone. "You wouldn't. Try me. You walked out on our son's engagement dinner. You humiliated me in front of the most important people in the city. And for what? Some fantasy with a man you haven't seen in 30 years. His name is Victor. I don't care what his name is. He's a distraction. And when you realize that, when you realize you have nowhere to go and no one to turn to, I might consider taking you back. Might. If you apologize publicly and if you never speak to him again." I laughed. It came out strangled, wrong. "What's funny?" Richard demanded. "You think I need your permission to exist? You need my money to exist. Or did you forget you haven't worked in 26 years? He was right. I hated that he was right. "I'll get a lawyer," I said. "With what money? You have $300 in your personal account." I checked. Of course he'd checked. He'd probably been checking for years. "California's a community property state," I said, though I had no idea if that meant what I thought it meant. "I'm entitled to half of everything." "You're entitled to what I decide you're entitled to. And I have the best divorce attorneys in the state on retainer. What do you have? Hope?" He hung up. I sat on the edge of the bed and tried to breathe. $300. That was it. That was all I had to Mount Nam after 30 years of marriage. The phone rang again. I almost didn't answer, but it wasn't Richard's number. "Hello? Mrs. Whitmore? This is Jennifer Chen from Apex Legal Group. Your husband retained our services this morning. We'll be filing divorce papers on grounds of abandonment and adultery. You should expect to be served within the week." My stomach dropped. Adultery? I didn't. Multiple witnesses saw you leave last night with another man. That's sufficient for our purposes. We're also filing for full financial disclosure. Any attempts to hide assets will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I don't have any assets to hide. That's for the court to decide. Have a nice day, Mrs. Whitmore. She hung up. I sat there holding the phone, feeling everything collapse inward. Abandonment, adultery. They were going to paint me as the villain. Richard was going to rewrite history until I was the one who'd ruined everything. And maybe I had. Maybe choosing myself was the same as abandoning everyone else. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. It's Victor. Are you okay? I stared at the message. Was I okay? No. I was 48 years old with $300, no job prospects, and a son who hated me. I was about to be dragged through a divorce that would destroy what little reputation I had left. I was so far from okay, it was almost funny. I typed back, no. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, I'm coming over. What hotel? I told him. He arrived 20 minutes later with coffee that was actually good and a bag from the bakery down the street. You didn't have to, I said. You need to eat. He set everything on the table by the window. Have you eaten? I don't remember. He gave me a look that said he wasn't surprised. We sat across from each other and I told him about Richard's call, about the lawyer, about the $300 and the accusations and the fact that my entire life could fit in a suitcase I hadn't even unpacked. Victor listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, I'll cover your legal fees. No, Ara, I'm not taking your money. Why not? Because then I'm just trading one man's control for another's. His jaw tightened. That's not what this is, isn't it? You swoop in, pay for everything, and I owe you. That's how it works. I don't want you to owe me anything. I want to help. Help or rescue. The question hung between us. Victor stood up and walked to the window. You think I'm trying to rescue you, aren't you? He turned around. 27 years ago, you made a choice without me. You decided I couldn't handle being a father, that I'd resent you, that I'd throw away my future. You decided all of that in my head and never gave me the chance to prove you wrong. Victor, I'm not trying to rescue you, Ara. I'm trying not to lose you again. The rawness in his voice cut through everything. I don't want your money because I need to do this myself, I said quietly. I need to know I can survive without someone else holding the strings. Even if it's harder, especially if it's harder. He came back to the table and sat down. Okay, no money, but I know people. Good divorce attorneys who'll take your case pro bono if I ask. That's using connections, not money. There's a difference. I wanted to argue, but he was right. Fine, I said, but that's it. No paying for hotels, no buying me groceries, no rescuing, he finished. Yeah. He smiled, but it was sad. You're going to hate asking for help, aren't you? I've spent 30 years not being allowed to ask for anything, so yeah, probably. We ate in silence. The pastries were good, flaky, buttery, the kind that left crumbs everywhere. I couldn't remember the last time I'd eaten something just because it tasted good. I need to see Ethan, I said suddenly. Victor's expression shifted. Are you sure that's a good idea right now? No, but I have to try. He told you not to contact him. He's my son. He's also an adult who's processing a massive betrayal. Pushing him might make it worse. And doing nothing definitely makes it worse. Victor didn't argue. I texted Ethan. I know you don't want to talk to me, but I need to explain. Please, just give me an hour. No response. I tried calling. It went straight to voicemail. Ethan, it's Mom. I know I don't deserve your time, but I'm asking anyway. I'll be at Riverside Park tomorrow at noon. The bench by the fountain. If you want answers, I'll be there. I hung up and felt the weight of uncertainty settle over everything. What if he doesn't come? I asked Victor. Then you try again. And if he never forgives me? Victor reached across the table and took my hand. Then you learn to forgive yourself. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Ethan as a baby, how he'd curl his tiny fist around my finger, how he'd fall asleep on my chest, his breath warm against my collarbone. Richard had been there, technically. He'd paid the hospital bills, set up the nursery, hired a nanny for when I was too exhausted to function. But he'd never held Ethan the way I did, never looked at him with that bone-deep wonder that comes from creating a whole person out of nothing. I used to think that meant Richard didn't love him. Now I wondered if it just meant he didn't know how. Or maybe he did love Ethan, his version of love, which looked like control and expectations and turning a child into a reflection of everything he wanted to be. At 3 a.m, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through old photos. Ethan at 5, missing his front teeth. Ethan at 12, holding up a soccer trophy. Ethan at 18, in his cap and gown, standing between Richard and me, but not quite touching either of us. In every photo, I was smiling. But my eyes were empty. I'd been a ghost in my own life. The next day, I got to the park an hour early. The fountain wasn't running, budget cuts probably, but the bench was still there. I sat down and watched people pass. Joggers, dog walkers, a mom with twins in a stroller who looked so tired I wanted to buy her coffee. Noon came and went, no Ethan. I told myself he just needed more time, that he'd come around eventually. But at 12:30, when the park was emptying out for lunch, I started to accept that he wasn't coming. I stood up to leave. Wait. I turned. Ethan stood 10 feet away, hands in his pockets, looking like he hadn't slept either. You came, I said. I almost didn't. His voice was flat, careful. I'm glad you did. He didn't move closer. I don't want to hear excuses. I don't want to hear about how hard it was or how you did the best you could. I just want the truth. Okay. Why didn't you tell him, my real father? Why didn't you tell Victor? I sat back down. He stayed standing. I tried, I said. When I found out I was pregnant, I called his apartment 3 times. He'd already left for Singapore and his phone was disconnected. I wrote letters, but his roommate never forwarded them. You could have tried harder. I was 21 and terrified. My parents told me I'd ruin his life if I dragged him back, that he'd resent me, that I'd be trapping him. So you trapped Richard instead. The accusation hit like a slap. Richard offered, I said quietly. He knew I was pregnant. He said he'd marry me anyway, raise you as his own, and I thought I was doing the right thing, giving you stability, a father who was there. He wasn't a father, he was a warden. I looked up. What? Ethan finally moved, pacing in front of the bench. You think I didn't notice? How he controlled everything. How he decided what sports I played, what schools I went to, what career I'd have. I wasn't his son, Mom. I was his project. Ethan, and you let him. For 26 years you stood there and let him turn me into a copy of himself. I thought I was protecting you. From what? The truth? He stopped pacing and looked at me. Really looked at me. I spent my whole life trying to figure out why I never felt like I belonged in that house. Why Dad, why Richard, always looked at me like I was a disappointment, even when I did everything right. Now I know. I wasn't his. I was a reminder of you choosing someone else. The words gutted me. He loved you, I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. He loved the idea of me, the son who'd take over his business, marry the right woman, produce the right grandchildren. But me, the actual person, I don't think he ever cared about that. I stood up. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I put you in that position. You thought a lie was better than the truth. But it wasn't, Mom. It was just easier for you. He was right. I told myself I was protecting everyone, Victor, Ethan, even Richard. But really I'd just been protecting myself from having to deal with the consequences of my choices. What happens now? I asked. Ethan shook his head. I don't know. I need time. I need to figure out who I am when my entire foundation was built on bullshit. Can I help? No, you can't. He started walking away, then stopped. Actually, there is one thing. What? Victor, is he a good person? The question caught me off guard. Yes, I said, he is. Does he know about me? He does now. Ethan nodded slowly. Does he want to meet me? My heart cracked. I think he'd love to meet you, but only if you want that. I don't know what I want. His voice broke. I don't know anything anymore. He walked away before I could respond. I sat back down on the bench and cried. Not loud, messy crying. Just silent tears that wouldn't stop. A hand touched my shoulder. I looked up. Victor stood there, holding 2 cups of coffee. You followed me, I said. I wanted to make sure you were okay. I'm not. I know. He sat down next to me and handed me a cup. What did he say? I told him everything about Ethan's anger, his pain, his question about Victor being a good person. He wants to know who you are, I finished, but he's not ready to meet you yet. Victor stared at the fountain. I have a son. Yeah, a son who hates his life because of choices we made without him. Yeah, that's... He stopped, started again. I don't know how to feel about that. Me neither. We sat there, 2 people who'd loved each other once and maybe still did, trying to figure out how to navigate the wreckage of 3 decades. I want to be angry at you, Victor said finally, for not trying harder to find me, for choosing Richard, for raising my son with another man's name. You should be angry. But I'm not. I'm just sad for all of us, for the life we could have had. We can't go back. I know, but we can move forward. I looked at him. What does that look like? Honestly, I have no idea, but I know I don't want to lose you again. Not now, not after I just got you back. I'm a mess, Victor. I don't have a job, a home, or any idea how to be a person on my own. I'm about to go through a divorce that's going to destroy me financially and publicly, and my son can't stand to look at me. So why would you want this? He turned to face me. Because 30 years ago I asked you to marry me. I froze. You don't remember, he said quietly. It was the night before I left for Singapore. We were in your apartment and I told you I didn't want to go without you. I said we'd figure it out together, the fellowship, the baby, everything. And I asked you to marry me. Victor, you said yes. And then the next morning you were gone. The memory hit me like a freight train. His face in the lamplight. The ring he'd bought with money he didn't have. My yes, whispered against his mouth like a promise. And then my parents showing up at dawn, telling me Victor's mother had called them, saying I needed to let him go, that I was ruining his future. I'd believed them. I'd packed my things and left before he woke up. I thought you'd hate me, I whispered, for trapping you. You didn't trap me. You freed me. From my parents' expectations, from the pressure to be perfect. You were the only person who ever saw me as just Victor. And I left anyway. Yeah, you did. We sat in silence. I can't undo the past, I said finally. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to stop running from the future. What if I don't know how? Then we'll figure it out together, the way we should have done 30 years ago. He stood up and held out his hand. I looked at it. This hand that had held mine through college classes and late-night diners, and a proposal I'd run from, and I took it. We walked through the park, not saying much, just existing in the same space. My phone buzzed. A text from Melissa. Ethan told me everything. I think we need to talk. My stomach dropped. Melissa wants to meet. Victor glanced at the phone. That's probably not good. No, probably not, but I texted back anyway. When and where? Her response was immediate. Tonight, 7 p.m., my parents' house. I showed Victor. That's a trap, he said. I know. You're going anyway. I have to. She's going to be part of Ethan's life, whether I like it or not. I can't avoid her forever. Want backup? I almost said yes, but this was something I needed to do alone. No, but thank you. That evening I stood outside the Hastings mansion, because that's what it was, a literal mansion with columns and a circular driveway, and tried to remember how to breathe. Melissa opened the door herself. Mrs. Whitmore, come in. The house was exactly what I expected. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, art that probably cost more than most people's houses. She led me to a sitting room where her mother, Genevieve, was already waiting. Clara, Genevieve's smile didn't reach her eyes. How kind of you to come. I sat down across from them. I'll get straight to the point, Melissa said. Ethan's a wreck. He can't sleep, can't focus, can't do anything except obsess over what you told him. I know, I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this. He's supposed to be planning our wedding, and instead he's questioning everything about his life. I understand. Do you? Genevieve interrupted. Do you understand what you've done? You've destabilized a young man on the verge of building his future, and for what? To ease your own guilty conscience? I didn't plan for it to happen this way, but it did, and now we're all dealing with the fallout. Melissa leaned forward. I love Ethan. I want to marry him, but I can't do that if he's falling apart. What are you asking me to do? Leave him alone. Stop dragging him into your drama. Let him heal. He's my son, and he's my fiancé, and right now, you're making it impossible for him to move forward. Genevieve set down her teacup. We're prepared to make this worth your while. I blinked. Excuse me? Richard mentioned you going through a difficult divorce. Financial strain, legal fees. We'd be happy to help. A one-time payment of $200,000. In exchange, you sign an agreement to stay away from Ethan for the next 2 years. The room tilted. You're trying to buy me off. We're offering you a solution. You get the financial stability you need. Ethan gets the space to heal. Everyone wins. Except I lose my son. You lost him the moment you lied to him, Melissa said coldly. I stood up. I'm not taking your money. Be reasonable, Clara. $200,000 could change your life. It could, but it won't, because my son isn't for sale. Genevieve's expression hardened. You're making a mistake. I've made plenty of those. This isn't one of them. I walked out. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely unlock my car. $200,000. I could pay for a lawyer, get an apartment, start over. All I had to do was walk away from Ethan. I drove back to the hotel and called Victor. They offered me money to stay away from him, I said when he answered. How much? $200,000. He was quiet for a long moment. What did you say? I said no. Good. Is it because I have $300, Victor? $300. And they're offering me a way out. It's not a way out. It's a cage, just a different one than Richard's. I leaned my head against the steering wheel. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be strong enough. You already are. I don't feel strong. Strength isn't feeling fearless. It's being terrified and doing the right thing anyway. I closed my eyes. What if Ethan never forgives me? Then you live with that. But at least you'll know you didn't sell your relationship with him for money. He was right. I hated that he was right, but he was. Thank you, I said. For what? For not letting me give up. Ara, you didn't give up 30 years ago when you were broke and pregnant and alone. You're not going to give up now. We talked for another hour. About nothing and everything. About the life we'd missed and the one we might still build. When I finally hung up, I felt lighter, not fixed, not healed, but lighter. The next morning, I got a call from a lawyer named Sarah Mendoza. Mrs. Whitmore, Victor Hale referred you to me. I understand you need representation in a divorce case. I do, but I can't afford pro bono. I owe Victor a favor and he's cashing it in. Are you available to meet today? I met her at her office downtown. Sarah was sharp, late 30s, perfectly tailored suit, the kind of woman who walked into a room and immediately owned it. Let's talk strategy, she said, spreading papers across her desk. Your husband's claiming adultery and abandonment. We're going to counter with emotional abuse and financial control. Can we prove that? Can you document any instances where he restricted your access to money, controlled your decisions, isolated you from friends or family? I thought about it, about the joint account I wasn't allowed to touch, about the friends I'd lost because Richard didn't approve, about the job offers I'd turned down because he said we didn't need the money. Yes, I said, I can document all of that. Good, then we have a case. It won't be easy and it won't be fast, but we can fight this. For the first time in days, I felt something like hope. We spent 3 hours going through everything. bank statements, emails, text messages, building a case against the man I'd spent 30 years with. When I left Sarah's office, the sun was setting. My phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. I talked to Victor. My heart stopped. Another text. He seems okay. For a dad I never knew I had. And then, I'm still mad at you, but I'm trying to understand. I sat down on a bench outside the building and cried. Not from sadness, from relief, from... Victor called me that night, his voice different, shaken. I met him today. I was lying on the hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to process Ethan's texts. I know, he told me. He just showed up at the restaurant, walked in during lunch service and asked to speak to me. What did you say? I took him to my office. We talked for 2 hours. My chest tightened. About what? Everything, nothing. He asked me about Singapore, about why I left, about what I would have done if I'd known about him. Victor paused. He asked if I would have stayed. What did you tell him? The truth, that I would have gotten on the first plane home, that I would have chosen him. You, us. I closed my eyes. Did he believe you? I don't know, but he needed to hear it. We were quiet for a moment. He looks like me, Victor said, and his voice cracked. The way he stands, the way he thinks through his words before he speaks. It's like looking at a version of myself I never got to meet. I'm sorry you missed it, all of it. So am I, but he's here now, that's what matters. I wanted to believe that we could just move forward and pretend the past didn't matter. But I knew better. The past was a weight we'd carry forever. Did he say anything about me? I asked. He said he's trying. That's all he can promise right now. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. The next week passed in a blur of legal paperwork and sleepless nights. Sarah was building the case methodically, pulling bank records and email trails that showed Richard's control over every aspect of my life. It was humiliating, seeing it all laid out like evidence of my own weakness. This isn't weakness, Sarah said when I told her that. This is documentation of abuse. Financial abuse is real, Clara. What he did to you, isolating you, controlling your access to money, making you dependent, that's textbook. I let it happen. You survived it. There's a difference. I wanted to believe her. Richard's lawyer sent over their proposed settlement. I read it 3 times, each time feeling sicker. I'd get the car, the 10-year-old sedan, not the BMW. $15,000 in a lump sum, and nothing else. This is insulting, Sarah said. We're in a community property state. You're entitled to half of everything he earned during the marriage. He'll fight it. Let him. We have evidence. He doesn't. But Richard did have something. He had money for endless legal battles. He had connections. He had the entire social structure of the city backing him up. What did I have? A borrowed lawyer and 30 years of receipts showing I'd been erased, piece by piece. The preliminary hearing was set for 3 weeks out. I threw up twice the morning we got the notice. Victor met me for coffee that afternoon. We'd fallen into a routine, these careful meetings where we talked about everything except what we both wanted to talk about. You look terrible, he said. Thanks. That's exactly what every woman wants to hear. I mean, you look exhausted. I am exhausted. I'm 48 years old, living in a hotel, fighting a man who has more resources than I'll ever have and trying to convince my son I'm not a monster. So yeah, exhausted covers it. Victor reached across the table and took my hand. Move in with me. I pulled my hand back. What? Move in with me. I have a house with 4 bedrooms. You're burning through money you don't have staying in that hotel. I can't do that. Why not? Because it looks bad. Richard's already claiming adultery. If I move in with you, we'll have separate rooms. I'll testify to that if needed. This is practical, Ara, not romantic. But it wasn't just practical. We both knew that. I need to do this on my own, I said. You keep saying that, but doing it alone isn't the same as doing it right. Maybe not, but it's the only way I'll know I can survive without someone else propping me up. He looked frustrated, hurt. I'm not trying to prop you up. I'm trying to be here for you. I know. But I spent 30 years having someone else make every decision for me. If I let you take over now, Even with good intentions, I'll never know if I'm actually strong or just good at finding someone to lean on. Victor sat back. That's not fair. None of this is fair, but it's the truth. We finished our coffee in silence. When I got back to the hotel, there was an envelope taped to my door. No return address. Just my name and handwriting I recognized. Richard's. Inside was a single photograph. Me and Victor, sitting at the coffee shop, his hand covering mine on the table. On the back, someone had written, "Evidence." My hand shook so hard I dropped it. They were following me. Richard was having me followed. I called Sarah immediately. "They're documenting everything," she said, which means they're scared. Richard wouldn't waste money on a PI if he thought he had this locked down. Or it means he's building a case to prove I'm exactly what he says I am. Let him try. You're allowed to have coffee with a friend. A friend I'm allegedly committing adultery with. Are you sleeping with Victor? No. Then it's not adultery, it's coffee. But we both knew how it would look to a judge. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that photograph, about someone watching me, cataloging my movements, building a file on every moment I tried to be something other than Richard's wife. At 2 a.m, I got a text from an unknown number. "You should have taken the money." My blood went cold. Another text. 200,000 would have set you up nicely. Now you get nothing. I knew that tone, that casual cruelty. Melissa. I texted back, "Are you threatening me?" "I'm advising you. Ethan doesn't need this stress. Neither do we. Walk away before this gets ugly." It's already ugly. It can get uglier, trust me. I stared at the phone, fury building in my chest. For 30 years, I'd swallowed threats. I'd accepted that other people's comfort mattered more than my dignity. Not anymore. I called her. She answered on the first ring. "Clara, how nice to hear from you. Stay out of my relationship with my son. I'm trying to protect him." From what? The truth? From you. You're toxic, Clara. You're dragging him down with your drama and your poor choices. My poor choices. I made one mistake. I lied to protect people I loved. What's your excuse? Her laugh was sharp. My excuse for what? For trying to buy me off. For threatening me. For thinking you can control who Ethan talks to. I'm not controlling anything. I'm setting boundaries. Something you clearly never learned. Boundaries, right. Is that what you call trying to erase me from his life? I call it damage control. Ethan deserves better than a mother who abandoned her family for some fantasy with an old boyfriend. I didn't abandon anyone. I stood up for myself. Same thing. The words hit like a slap. "You know what?" I said, my voice shaking. "You can think whatever you want about me. You can tell Ethan I'm a terrible person. You can convince yourself you're doing the right thing. But you don't get to decide whether I'm his mother. That's not yours to take. Watch me." She hung up. I sat there, phone in hand, shaking with rage. The next morning I got a call from Ethan. "Did you call Melissa last night?" She texted me first. What did she say? She told me to back off, that I was stressing you out. Ethan was quiet. "She's worried about me." "So am I." "Yeah, but you're the reason I'm stressed in the first place." The accusation stung, even though it was true. "I know," I said, "and I'm sorry, but Melissa doesn't get to dictate whether we have a relationship." "She's not dictating anything. She's just trying to help." "By threatening me?" "She didn't threaten you. She told me things could get ugly if I didn't walk away." "What would you call that?" Ethan sighed. "She's protective, that's all." "No, she's controlling. And if you can't see that, don't," he cut me off. "Don't turn this into a fight about Melissa. This is about you and me." He was right, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Melissa was driving a wedge between us deliberately. "Can we meet?" I asked. "Just talk, no drama." "I don't know if that's a good idea right now." "Please, Ethan, 1 hour." He was quiet for so long, I thought he'd hung up. "Fine, tomorrow the park, same place." I arrived early again, but this time he was already there. He looked worse than before, dark circles under his eyes, hair uncombed, like he'd aged 5 years in 2 weeks. "Hey," I said, sitting down next to him. "Hey." We sat in silence. "I talked to Richard," he said finally. My stomach dropped. "What did he say?" "He said you were always weak, that you'd run at the first sign of trouble, that he wasn't surprised you chose Victor over us." "That's not what happened." "Isn't it? You left, Mom. You walked out of that dinner and didn't come back. Because he humiliated me in front of everyone. Because he put his hands on me and made me kneel like I was nothing. He said you were being dramatic." "Of course he did." Ethan turned to look at me. "Were you?" The question cut deeper than anything Richard could have said. "You think I made it up, that I overreacted?" "I don't know what to think anymore. Richard says one thing, you say another. Victor says something else. Everyone has a version of the truth, and I'm stuck in the middle trying to figure out what actually happened. What happened is that I spent 30 years disappearing. Richard didn't hit me, if that's what you're asking. But he didn't have to. He just erased me, piece by piece, until I couldn't remember who I was before him. Then why did you stay? Because I thought it was best for you. Because I thought a stable home with 2 parents was better than the chaos of being a single mom. So you sacrificed yourself, yes, and now you want credit for it." I stared at him. "Is that what you think? I think you made a choice 30 years ago, and now you're trying to rewrite history to make yourself the victim." "I'm not." "You are, Mom. You left Richard, and now you're acting like he's the villain and you're the hero. But it's not that simple." "I never said it was simple." "Then stop acting like it is." We sat in angry silence. "I don't need you to forgive me," I said finally, "but I need you to understand that leaving Richard wasn't about punishing you. It was about surviving." "Surviving what?" "A marriage that was killing me." Ethan stood up. "I can't do this right now." "Ethan, please." "I need space, Mom. From you, from Richard, from all of it." He walked away. I sat on that bench for an hour after he left, trying to breathe through the panic. I was losing him. Maybe I'd already lost him. Victor found me there, same as before. "Bad?" he asked. "Worse." I told him everything. About Melissa's threats, about Richard's lies, about Ethan accusing me of playing the victim. "He's processing," Victor said. "Give him time." "What if time doesn't fix this?" "Then it doesn't. But you can't force healing." "I'm not trying to force anything. I just want my son back." "I know, but he's not a kid anymore. He gets to decide what relationship he wants with you, and you have to respect that." I hated that he was right. We went back to his restaurant. He made me dinner in the kitchen after closing. Pasta with garlic and olive oil. Simple and perfect. "I used to cook this for you in college," he said. "I remember, burnt garlic and all." He smiled. "I'm better at it now." "You're better at a lot of things. So are you." I shook my head. "I don't feel better at anything. I feel like I'm 30 years behind everyone else." "You're not behind. You're just starting from a different place." We ate in the quiet kitchen, surrounded by stainless steel and the smell of old cooking oil. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Anything. Do you regret it? Singapore, the fellowship, all of it. Do you ever wish you'd just stayed?" Victor set down his fork. "Every day for the first 5 years, I'd wake up and think about you. Wonder where you were, what you were doing, if you were happy. I wasn't. I know that now. But back then, I convinced myself you'd moved on, that you'd found someone better. There was no one better, just someone safer. Safe isn't the same as good. I know that now too." He reached across the table and took my hand. "We can't undo the past, but we can stop letting it define the future. What if the future is just as messy? Then we'll figure it out together." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe we could build something real out of the wreckage. But doubt sat heavy in my chest. The preliminary hearing arrived faster than I wanted it to. Richard showed up in a suit that probably cost more than my legal fees, flanked by 3 attorneys. I had Sarah. The judge was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and zero patience. "This is a preliminary hearing," she said. "We're here to establish grounds and set parameters for discovery. Mr. Whitmore, your petition claims abandonment and adultery. Mrs. Whitmore, your counter-petition claims financial abuse and emotional cruelty. Let's start with evidence." Richard's lead attorney stood up. a man named Douglas Pierce, who looked like he'd been born in a courtroom. Your Honor, we have documented evidence that Mrs. Whitmore abandoned the marital home following her son's engagement dinner. She left without notice, refused to return, and has been seen multiple times with another man. We have photographs, witness statements, and a pattern of behavior that demonstrates clear adultery. He slid a folder across to the judge. My stomach turned. Sarah stood. Your Honor, Mrs. Whitmore left the home following a public incident in which Mr. Whitmore physically forced her to kneel and clean his shoes in front of 14 witnesses. We have sworn statements from 3 of those witnesses describing the incident as humiliating and degrading. As for the adultery claim, having coffee with a friend isn't grounds for adultery. Mrs. Whitmore has maintained separate residence and has not engaged in any sexual relationship outside her marriage. Can you prove that? Pierce asked. Can you prove she has? Sarah shot back. The judge held up a hand. Enough. Mrs. Mendoza, do you have evidence of financial abuse? We do, Your Honor. Bank statements showing that Mrs. Whitmore had no access to marital funds. Email exchanges where Mr. Whitmore denied her request for basic household expenses. A pattern of control spanning 30 years. Those funds were managed responsibly, Pierce interjected. Mr. Whitmore provided everything his wife needed. Everything he decided she needed, Sarah corrected. There's a difference between provision and control. The judge flipped through the documents. I'm ordering full financial discovery from both parties. All bank accounts, investment portfolios, property holdings. Mr. Whitmore, you'll provide Mrs. Whitmore with temporary spousal support in the amount of $5,000 per month until this is resolved. Richard's jaw clenched. Your Honor, Pierce began, $5,000 is excessive. It's community property, Counselor. Mrs. Whitmore is entitled to maintain the standard of living established during the marriage. $5,000 is conservative given your client's income. I almost cried right there in the courtroom. $5,000 a month. It wasn't freedom, but it was survival. The hearing ended with a trial date set for 3 months out. Outside the courthouse, Richard was waiting. $5,000 a month, he said, for doing nothing. For 30 years of doing everything you told me to. You're going to regret this. You keep saying that, but I don't, not yet. His eyes went cold. You think you're going to walk away with half of what I built, what I earned while you sat home doing nothing? I raised your son. I ran your household. I made you look good to every single person who mattered to your career. That's not nothing. Ethan isn't my son. You made sure of that. The words hung in the air like poison. He was your son when you needed him to be, I said quietly. When you needed him to make you look like a family man. When you needed him to impress clients. He was your son then, and now he's Victor's problem. He's not a problem, he's a person. Richard stepped closer. You're going to lose, Clara, this trial, this fight. You're going to lose everything. And when you do, don't come crawling back. I wouldn't crawl back to you if I was dying in the street. His hand twitched, and for a second I thought he might actually hit me. But we were in public, and Richard never lost control where people could see. We're done here, he said, and walked away. Sarah appeared beside me. You okay? No, but I will be. That night, I used some of the temporary support to move out of the hotel and into a small apartment across town. 1 bedroom, ancient appliances, a view of a parking lot. It was perfect. Victor helped me move my single suitcase of belongings. This is it, he asked. This is it. He looked around the empty apartment. We could furnish it. I know people. No, I'll furnish it myself. Slowly. Ara, Victor, I need to do this, please. He nodded, but I could see the frustration in his eyes. After he left, I sat on the floor of my empty living room and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. It was small, fragile, but it was mine. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Dad told me about the hearing, about the money. I waited. Another text. He said you're taking him for everything he's worth. My chest tightened. He's wrong, I typed back. I'm taking what I'm entitled to. There's a difference. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. I don't know who to believe anymore. Then don't believe anyone. Look at the facts and decide for yourself. The dots disappeared. No response. I sat there holding my phone, waiting for something that didn't come. The next week I started looking for a job. It was humiliating. Every application asked about my work history, and I had nothing to show for the last 26 years except homemaker. I applied to administrative positions, retail jobs, anything that didn't require recent experience. Rejection after rejection. We're looking for someone with more current skills. This position requires proficiency in software you're not familiar with. We've decided to go with another candidate. I was 48 years old and I was unemployable. Victor offered to hire me at the restaurant. I said no. Pride isn't going to pay your rent, he said. Neither is depending on you. It's not dependence, it's a job. A job you're only offering because we used to sleep together. His face went hard. That's not fair. Maybe not, but it's true. We didn't talk for 3 days after that. I spent those 3 days applying to more jobs and getting more rejections. On the 4th day, I got a call from a small art gallery downtown. Mrs. Whitmore, this is Helen Park. I'm the owner of Gilded Frame Gallery. I saw you applied for our gallery assistant position. Yes, hi. Your resume mentions you paint watercolors? Yes, though I haven't shown anything in years. Would you be willing to bring some pieces when you come in for an interview? My heart jumped. Absolutely. Great. How's tomorrow at 10? I hung up and immediately panicked. My watercolors were still in the garage at Richard's house. I'd have to go back there to get them. I called Richard. He didn't answer. I texted, I need to get some things from the garage. When is a good time? His response was immediate. No, they're mine. My paintings. Everything in that house is marital property until the court says otherwise. Richard, please, they're personal. They have no value. Then you won't miss them. I wanted to scream. Instead, I called Sarah. He can't keep your personal effects, she said. I'll file a motion, but that'll take time. Is there another way to get in? I thought about it, the spare key. I'd hidden one in the backyard years ago, under the loose brick by the garden shed. Maybe, I said. I'm not suggesting you break in, Sarah said carefully. But if you had legal access to the property and happened to collect your belongings, that wouldn't be breaking in. I understood what she wasn't saying. That night, I drove to the house. All the lights were off. Richard's car wasn't in the driveway. I found the brick. The key was still there, rusty but functional. I let myself in through the back door. The house was exactly as I'd left it, spotless, cold, empty. I went straight to the garage. My paintings were gone, every single one. The easel was there, the paints, but the canvases, 30 years of work, were gone. I searched the garage, the house, everywhere, nothing. He'd destroyed them. I knew it. I sat on the garage floor and cried until I couldn't breathe. Those paintings were the only proof I'd existed as something other than Richard's wife. And he'd erased them, just like he'd erased everything else. My phone buzzed. A text from Richard. Looking for something. My blood ran cold. Another text. I had the cameras installed last week. I can see you sitting in my garage. I stood up fast, looking around for cameras. Found one in the corner, red light blinking. Those paintings were mine, I texted back. Were. Past tense. I donated them to a thrift store. Seemed fitting. I wanted to destroy something, break something, scream until my throat was raw. Instead, I walked out of that house for the second time, and I swore I'd never go back. I showed up to the gallery interview the next morning with nothing. No portfolio, no paintings. Just me and 30 years of rage I was trying to keep contained. Helen Park was younger than I expected, maybe early 40s, with paint-stained fingers and the kind of energy that made the room feel too small. Her gallery was cramped but beautiful, filled with local artists' work that actually meant something. Clara Whitmore, she said, shaking my hand. Where are your pieces? They're gone. She blinked. Gone? My husband threw them out, donated them. I don't know. They're just gone. I expected her to end the interview right there, to tell me she needed someone serious, someone professional, someone who hadn't lost 3 decades of work to a man's cruelty. Instead, she said, "Sit down." We sat in her cramped office, surrounded by frames and invoices and the smell of turpentine. "Tell me about your work," she said. "I don't have any work left." "Tell me anyway." So I did. I told her about the watercolors I'd painted in secret, the landscapes I'd created while Richard was at work, the portraits I'd hidden in the back of the garage because he said they were a waste of time. I told her about the piece I'd been most proud of, a woman standing in a doorway, half in shadow, half in light, and how I'd never shown it to anyone because I was afraid of what they'd see. Helen listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "Can you paint something new right now?" "Right now?" "I have supplies in the back. If you're as good as you say you are, prove it." She led me to a small studio space behind the gallery, set up an easel, handed me brushes and paints, and gave me a canvas. "You have 2 hours," she said. "Paint whatever you want." Then she left. I stood there staring at the blank canvas, panic rising in my throat. I hadn't painted in front of anyone in 26 years. I'd hidden it, treated it like a secret shame. Convinced myself it didn't matter. But it did matter. It was the only thing that had ever been completely mine. I picked up the brush. 2 hours later, Helen came back. I'd painted the hotel room, the one I'd stayed in that first night. Empty bed, light bleeding through the curtains, a suitcase on the floor. It wasn't technically perfect. My hands were shaky, my proportions slightly off, but it was honest. It was real. Helen studied it for a long time. "When can you start?" she asked. I almost cried. "What?" "The gallery assistant position, part-time, 20 hours a week, $12 an hour. It's not much, but I'll take it." She smiled. "Good, because I need someone who understands what it's like to create something just to survive. Most people don't get that." I started the next day. The work was simple, greeting customers, processing sales, helping hang new pieces, but it was mine. Money I earned with my own hands, doing something I actually cared about. For the first time in 30 years, I had a purpose that wasn't serving someone else. Victor called that night. "I heard you got a job. How did you—" "Small city. Helen's gallery is 2 blocks from my restaurant. Word travels." I could hear the hurt in his voice, the question he wasn't asking. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I was going to call you," I said. "Were you?" "Yes, I needed to make sure it was real first. And now it's real." We were quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry," I said, "for what I said about you only offering me a job because we used to sleep together. That wasn't fair." It wasn't entirely wrong either. His honesty surprised me. "I want to help you, Ara, but I don't know how to do that without you thinking I'm trying to control you, or rescue you, or whatever else you're afraid I'm doing." "I'm not afraid of you." "Yes, you are. You're terrified that if you let me in, I'll become Richard, that I'll take over your life the way he did." He was right. I hated that he was right. "I need to prove to myself that I can do this alone," I said, "that I'm not just trading one dependency for another. I'm not asking you to depend on me. I'm asking you to trust me. What's the difference? Dependency is needing someone to survive. Trust is choosing to let someone stand beside you while you do." I closed my eyes. "I don't know if I can do that yet. Then I'll wait. The trial date loomed closer. Discovery had revealed what I already knew. Richard had been hiding money for years. Offshore accounts, shell companies, investments in his brother's name. The amount was staggering. Over $4 million that he'd carefully moved out of reach. "This is fraud," Sarah said, spreading the documents across her desk. "He's been systematically hiding marital assets. The judge is going to crucify him. Unless he has a good explanation." "There's no good explanation for this. He's screwed, Clara." But I knew Richard. He always had a plan. The confrontation came 2 weeks before trial. I was leaving the gallery when a car pulled up beside me. Richard's BMW. He rolled down the window. "Get in." "No." "Get in the car, Clara. We need to talk. We have nothing to talk about. Get in or I'll make a scene right here on the street. Your choice." I looked around. People were watching. Helen was probably watching from inside the gallery. I got in. Richard drove without speaking, heading toward the park. The same park where I'd met with Ethan. The irony wasn't lost on me. He parked and turned off the engine. "You're going to drop the divorce," he said. I laughed. Actual laughter. "No, I'm not." "Yes, you are, because if you don't, I'm going to destroy you." "You've already tried that." "No, I've been gentle. But if you push this to trial, I will bury you. Every mistake you've ever made, every weakness, every moment of instability, it will all come out. I'm not afraid of you anymore. You should be." He turned to face me. "I know about Victor, about Singapore, about the letters you wrote him that his roommate threw away." My blood went cold. "How do you—" "I hired investigators the week after you told me you were pregnant. I needed to know who the father was, what kind of man I was competing against." He smiled. "It was ugly. Turns out Victor's roommate was easy to buy. He gave me those letters for $500. I've kept them all these years." "Why?" "Insurance, in case you ever got brave enough to leave." I felt sick. "What do you want, Richard?" "Drop the divorce. Come home. We'll tell everyone it was a misunderstanding, that we're working through things. You'll sign a post-nuptial agreement that waives your claim to any assets. And in exchange, I won't show those letters to Ethan. Those letters are private. They're evidence of an affair that started before we were married, of you trying to contact Victor behind my back for years after Ethan was born, of you never really choosing me at all." He pulled a folder from the back seat and handed it to me. I opened it. Letters in my handwriting. 27 years old, yellowed with age. Letters I'd written to Victor in those early years of marriage when I was drowning, and desperate and still believed he might save me somehow. Letters where I told him I loved him, that I'd made a mistake, that I wished I could undo everything. "These will destroy your relationship with Ethan," Richard said. "He'll see that you never loved me, that you never wanted the life you built with me, that he was born into a lie that you kept lying about for decades. He already knows I didn't love you." Knowing and seeing are different things. Reading your mother's words, "I wish I'd never married Richard. I wish I could go back and choose differently. That's going to gut him." I stared at the letters. He was right. Ethan was already barely speaking to me. These would finish it. "Why did you keep them?" I asked. "All these years, why not just throw them away?" "Because I knew you'd leave eventually. You were always weak, Clara, always looking for an escape. I just needed to make sure that when you finally ran, you'd have nowhere to go." The casual cruelty in his voice was worse than any physical blow. "I gave you everything," he continued. "A home, a family, status. And you threw it away for what? A fantasy? A man you barely know anymore." "I know him better than I ever knew you." "You don't know anything. You're a 48-year-old woman with no skills, no money, and a son who can barely stand to look at you. What exactly do you think you're going to do? Sell watercolors in a gallery, make $12 an hour for the rest of your life? If that's what it takes to be free of you, yes." Richard's expression hardened. "You have 24 hours to decide. Drop the divorce or I release the letters. Your choice." He started the car. I got out without saying anything else. I called Sarah immediately. "He can't use those letters," she said after I explained. "Their personal correspondence. The judge won't allow it. He's not going to submit them to the court. He's going to give them to Ethan." Sarah was quiet. "That's not illegal, so he can do it." "Unfortunately, yes." I hung up and sat on a bench in the park trying to figure out what to do. If I dropped the divorce, I'd get nothing. I'd go back to that house, sign away any claim to the money, and spend the rest of my life as Richard's prisoner. If I didn't, Ethan would read those letters. He'd see every moment I'd doubted, every time I'd wished I could leave, every word I'd written about, regretting the choice I'd made. He'd hate me. He probably already did, but this would make it permanent. My phone rang. "Victor." "Are you okay?" he asked. "You sound strange." "Richard has letters I wrote to you years ago after Ethan was born. He's threatening to show them to Ethan if I don't drop the divorce." Victor swore. "What did you say in them?" "The truth, that I regretted marrying Richard, that I wished I could go back and choose you instead." "That's not, Ira, those are your private thoughts. He can't use that against you. He can if it destroys my relationship with Ethan. Ethan will understand. Will he? He already thinks I'm rewriting history to make myself the victim. These letters will prove him right. No, they won't. They'll prove you were trapped, that you were trying to survive. I wanted to believe him. I need to see those letters, Victor said. Do you have copies? Richard showed me the folder. I didn't take any. Can you get them? How? Break into his car? If necessary. I almost laughed. You're serious. Those letters are yours, Ara. He had no right to keep them. And he definitely has no right to use them as blackmail. Even if I got them back, he probably has copies. Then we find the copies. But first, we get the originals. This was insane, breaking into Richard's car, stealing documents, acting like criminals. But Richard had been stealing from me for 30 years. My time, my identity, my voice. Maybe it was time to steal something back. Okay, I said, how do we do this? Victor's plan was simple. Richard went to his club every Thursday night, parked in the same spot, stayed for exactly 3 hours. We'd have that window to get in, find the letters, and get out. This is crazy, I said for the 10th time. You keep saying that, but you're still here. We were parked across from Richard's club, watching his BMW in the lot. What if he has an alarm? Then we run. What if we get caught? Then I take the blame. I'll say I did it without telling you. Victor, Ara, I'm not letting you go back to him. Not for letters, not for money, not for anything. If breaking into a car is what it takes, then that's what we're doing. He got out before I could argue. I followed. Richard's car was unlocked. Of course it was. He was arrogant enough to think no one would dare touch his things. The folder was in the back seat, exactly where he'd pulled it from earlier. Victor grabbed it. Got it. Let's go. We were back in his car in less than 2 minutes. I opened the folder with shaking hands. 23 letters, all in my handwriting, all addressed to Victor at his old apartment. I read them in the car, and each one was like reopening a wound. In the first letter, written 3 months after I married Richard, I told Victor about the wedding. How small it was, how I'd cried the entire time, how Richard's mother had told me I should be grateful he'd taken me. In the 5th letter, written when Ethan was 6 months old, I told Victor about the nights I'd stand over the crib and wonder what our son would have been like if we'd raised him together. In the 12th letter, written on Ethan's 5th birthday, I told Victor I'd stop trying to contact him, that I needed to accept the life I'd chosen, that I hoped he was happy wherever he was. I wrote one more after that, I said, my voice breaking. The last one, on Ethan's 10th birthday. I told you I was letting you go, that I had to, that remembering you was killing me. Victor was staring straight ahead, jaw clenched. I never got any of them, he said quietly. I know. If I had... Everything would be different. We sat in silence. What do we do now? I asked. We destroy them, all of them, so he can't use them. He probably has copies. Then we call his bluff. We go to trial and dare him to submit personal letters as evidence. Sarah said the judge won't allow it. He's not going to submit them to court. He's going to give them to Ethan directly. Victor turned to look at me. Then we tell Ethan first. We show him the letters ourselves. We control the narrative. That's the same result. He still sees them. No, because we'll explain the context. We'll tell him what your life was like then, what Richard did, why you wrote them. He won't care about the context. He'll just see that I regretted having him. You didn't regret having him. You regretted the circumstances. He won't see the difference. Victor reached over and took my hand. You can't keep protecting Ethan from the truth. He's a grown man. He can handle knowing his mother was human, that she made mistakes, that she struggled. What if he can't? Then that's his choice. But at least he'll know you were honest with him. I looked down at the letters in my lap. 23 pieces of evidence that I'd never wanted the life I'd lived. 23 reasons for Ethan to hate me. But also 23 pieces of proof that I'd tried, that I'd reached out, that I'd fought against the current even when I knew I was drowning. Okay, I said, we tell him. I texted Ethan that night, I need to see you tomorrow. It's important. He didn't respond until morning. Can't. Working. It can't wait. Then it'll have to. I'm busy, Mom. I showed up at his office anyway. He worked at Richard's firm. Of course he did. Richard had made sure of that. Ethan had never had a choice about his career any more than I'd had a choice about my life. The receptionist tried to stop me. I'm sorry, ma'am, but you need an appointment. I'm his mother. Tell him I'm here. She looked uncomfortable but picked up the phone. Ethan came out 2 minutes later, looking furious. What are you doing here? We need to talk, privately. I'm working. It's about Richard and letters I wrote to Victor years ago. Letters Richard's been hiding. His expression shifted. What letters? Not here, please. He looked at his watch, then back at me. I have 15 minutes. We went to a coffee shop down the street. I laid the folder on the table between us. Richard's been blackmailing me, I said. He has letters I wrote to Victor after you were born. He's threatening to show them to you if I don't drop the divorce. Ethan stared at the folder. What's in them? The truth about how I felt being married to Richard, about how much I regretted not choosing Victor. So you did regret having me? No, I regretted the circumstances. I regretted being 21 and terrified and making a choice I didn't want to make. Same thing. It's not Ethan. I loved you from the second I knew you existed, but loving you didn't make the marriage any less of a prison. He opened the folder and pulled out a letter at random. I watched him read it, watched his face go through a dozen emotions. When he finished, he set it down carefully. You wanted to leave, he said. Even when I was a baby, you wanted out. I wanted to survive. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you spent my entire childhood wishing you were somewhere else. I wished I was free. That's not the same as wishing you didn't exist. You wrote that you stood over my crib and wondered what I would have been like with a different father. How is that not wishing I was different? Because different doesn't mean better, it just means different. He stood up. I can't do this. Ethan, you lied to me for 26 years, and now you're showing me proof that you've been lying to yourself too, that you've never actually wanted this life, this family, me. That's not true, isn't it? You wrote these letters, Mom. You said these things. You can't take them back just because it's convenient now. He grabbed his jacket. I need space, real space, not just a few days. I need you to stop calling, stop showing up at my office, stop trying to fix this. How long? I don't know, maybe forever. He walked out. I sat there with the letters scattered across the table, feeling everything crumble. I'd lost him. Victor had been wrong. Honesty hadn't saved us. It had destroyed us. I gathered up the letters and walked back to my apartment in a daze. When I got there, Richard was waiting outside my door. I see you found the letters, he said. How did you... I had copies, obviously. Did you really think I'd keep the only set in my car? He smiled. You're so predictable, Clara, so desperate to control something, anything. That's why you'll never win. Get away from my apartment. Our apartment. Community property, remember? I'm paying your rent. The court ordered you to. For now. But after trial, when the judge sees what you've been hiding, when Ethan testifies about the kind of mother you really were, Ethan won't testify against me, won't he? I just got off the phone with him. He's furious, devastated. He said you showed him letters proving you never wanted him. That's not what they said. Doesn't matter what they said. What matters is how he interpreted them. And right now, he interprets them as proof that his mother is a liar who regrets his existence. I felt myself breaking, splintering. You did this, I said. You manipulated those letters, manipulated him. I didn't have to manipulate anything. You wrote them. You wrote every word about how much you hated your life with me. All I did was make sure your son saw the truth. The truth is that you were destroying me, that I was drowning, that those letters were the only way I could breathe. And now Ethan knows that you were drowning in motherhood in him. That's not. It doesn't matter what you meant, Clara. It matters what he believes, and he believes his mother never wanted him. Richard stepped closer. Drop the divorce. Come home. Sign the papers, or I'll make sure Ethan never speaks to you again. I looked at this man I'd spent 30 years with, this man who knew exactly how to hurt me, who'd made it into an art form, and I realized something. He was right about one thing. It didn't matter what I meant. It didn't matter what the truth was. All that mattered was what I did next. "No," I said. Richard blinked. "What?" "No, I'm not dropping the divorce. I'm not coming home. I'm not signing anything." "Then you'll lose your son." "Maybe, but I'll keep myself, and right now that's worth more." His face went red. "You're making a mistake." "Probably, but it's my mistake to make." I unlocked my apartment door and stepped inside. Richard grabbed my arm. "Let go of me," I said. "You're nothing without me. You'll end up alone in some studio apartment working minimum wage with no family and no future. Better than being with you." I pulled my arm free and slammed the door in his face. Then I slid down to the floor and cried until there was nothing left. Victor found me on the floor an hour later. I'd given him a spare key the week before, though I told myself it was just practical, just in case. Now I was glad. He didn't say anything, just sat down beside me and pulled me against his chest. I cried into his shirt until it was soaked through, until my throat was raw, until there was nothing left but exhaustion. "I lost him," I finally said. "You don't know that. He told me to stay away. Maybe forever. That sounds pretty permanent to me." Victor was quiet for a moment. "You did the right thing." "Did I?" "Because it doesn't feel right. It feels like I just destroyed the last relationship that mattered. You were honest with him. That matters more than you think. Honesty doesn't matter if it costs me my son." He pulled back to look at me. "Ora, listen to me. Ethan is 26 years old. He's processing a lifetime of lies in a matter of weeks. That's not going to be clean or easy or fair, but he's also smart enough to eventually see the difference between a mother who made mistakes and a father who weaponized them. Eventually isn't now. No, but it's something." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that time would fix this, that Ethan would come around, that honesty would matter in the end. But I'd spent 30 years believing things that weren't true. I was done lying to myself. The trial started on a Tuesday. I wore the navy dress I'd bought with my mother's inheritance money, the one Richard had told me not to wear to Ethan's engagement dinner. It fit perfectly, and for the first time in years, I looked like someone who existed. Richard showed up with his team of lawyers and Melissa's father. The message was clear. I was alone, and he had an army, but I had Sarah, and the truth, and 30 years of evidence that he'd been systematically erasing me. The first day was procedural. Statements from both sides. Documentation entered into evidence. The judge setting ground rules. Judge Morrison was the same woman from the preliminary hearing. She looked even less patient than before. "This court will determine the equitable distribution of marital assets," she said. "I will not tolerate grandstanding, manipulation, or attempts to intimidate the opposing party. Am I clear?" Both sides nodded. Richard's lawyer went first. He painted a picture of a devoted husband who'd provided everything for his ungrateful wife. A woman who'd abandoned her family the moment things got difficult, who'd run to another man who was now trying to take what she hadn't earned. Mrs. Whitmore contributed nothing to the marital estate, Pierce said. She didn't work, didn't generate income, didn't build the business that created the wealth she's now trying to claim. She was, by her own admission, a homemaker. And while that's a valuable role, it doesn't entitle her to half of what my client built with his own hands. Sarah stood up for cross-examination. "Mr. Pierce, you say Mrs. Whitmore didn't work. Is raising a child not work?" "Of course it's work, but is managing a household not work, hosting business dinners, maintaining the social connections that helped your client's career? Those are supportive roles. So you agree she supported his career, which enabled him to build the wealth you claim she had no part in creating." Pierce's jaw tightened. "That's a simplification. It's a fact, and the law recognizes that non-financial contributions to a marriage have value. Mrs. Whitmore spent 30 years enabling your client's success. She's entitled to share in it." The first day ended without resolution. I went home to my apartment and stared at the walls. No calls from Ethan, no texts, nothing. Victor brought dinner. I couldn't eat. You did well today, he said. I sat there and let them talk about me like I was furniture. You let Sarah fight for you. That's not the same thing. It feels the same. He set down his fork. Do you want to testify? Sarah said it's optional, that the financial records speak for themselves. But if you want to tell your side, what's my side? That I stayed in a marriage I hated because I was too scared to leave. That I let Richard control me for 3 decades because I didn't think I deserved better. What exactly am I supposed to say that won't make me look weak? That you survived. That you're here, fighting for yourself, even when everyone told you to give up. I looked at him. You think that's enough? I think it's everything. The second day of trial was worse. Richard took the stand. He was calm, collected, sympathetic. He talked about how hard he'd worked to provide for his family, how he'd raised Ethan as his own son, never once treating him differently despite knowing he wasn't biologically his. I love that boy, Richard said, and his voice actually cracked. I gave him everything, a home, an education, a future, and I never asked for anything in return except loyalty. And did you receive that loyalty? Pierce asked. From Ethan, yes. From my wife? He looked directly at me. No, she was always distant, always somewhere else. I thought it was postpartum depression at first, but it never went away. She never fully committed to our family. It was masterful. He was rewriting 30 years of control as concern, abuse as care. Sarah's cross-examination was brutal. Mr. Whitmore, you say you never asked for anything except loyalty. Is that why you monitored your wife's spending? I managed our finances responsibly. Is that why you required her to ask permission before making purchases? We discussed expenses together. Is that why she had no access to the primary bank account? Why you maintained separate credit cards in your name only? That's standard financial management. For a business partner, or for someone you wanted to control. Richard's composure slipped, just for a second. I provided everything she needed, everything you decided she needed. There's a difference, isn't there? I was protecting our assets. From your wife, the woman you claim to love. Pierce objected. The judge sustained it, but the damage was done. The jury, 6 people who'd never met Richard, never been charmed by him, looked skeptical. On the 3rd day, Sarah called me to the stand. I'd practiced this, gone over my testimony a dozen times, but sitting in that chair, with Richard staring at me and strangers judging every word, I felt like I was drowning. Sarah started with easy questions, my name, how long I'd been married, basic facts. Then she asked, Mrs. Whitmore, why did you marry Richard? I looked at my hands. I was pregnant, scared. He offered stability. Did you love him? No. The courtroom stirred. Did you tell him that? Not in those words, but he knew. I was transparent about why I was marrying him. And did he agree to those terms? Yes. He said he didn't care, that he'd make me love him eventually. Did he? No, he made me afraid of him instead. Pierce started to object, but the judge waved him off. Sarah continued, Can you describe the financial arrangement in your marriage? I told them everything. About the joint account I couldn't access, about having to ask permission for groceries, about the credit cards in his name only, about my mother's inheritance being the only money I'd ever had that was truly mine, and your personal pursuits, your art. I painted in the garage in secret. Richard said it was a waste of time. Did he ever destroy your work? Yes, a month ago, 30 years of paintings. He donated them to a thrift store. Why would he do that? To prove he could. To prove that nothing I created mattered unless he allowed it to. I saw the jury react, saw them look at Richard differently. Pierce's cross-examination was designed to destroy me. Mrs. Whitmore, you claim you were afraid of your husband. Did he ever hit you? No. Threaten you with violence? Not physical violence. So he never harmed you. He harmed me in every way that doesn't leave bruises. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. Pierce pulled out the letters, the ones I'd written to Victor. These are letters you wrote to another man while married to my client. Correct? My stomach dropped. Yes. Letters where you express regret about your marriage, about your son, about your life, about the circumstances, not about my son. Let me read one passage. I stand over his crib at night and wonder what he would have been like with a different father. Would he smile more? Would I smile more? That's you talking about your son, is it not? Yes, wishing he had a different father, wishing we both had different circumstances. Sounds like regret to me. Then you're not listening. The judge intervened. Mr. Pierce, do you have a question or are you editorializing? I'm establishing that Mrs. Whitmore has spent decades lying to her family, to her husband, to her son, and now she wants this court to reward her for it. Objection, Sarah said, argumentative, sustained. Move on, Mr. Pierce. But the damage was done. When I stepped down from the stand, I felt like I'd been flayed alive. The trial lasted 6 more days. Witnesses testified. Financial experts broke down Richard's hidden assets. Character witnesses from both sides painted competing pictures of our marriage. Richard's colleagues talked about what a devoted family man he was. Helen from the gallery talked about how I'd walked in with nothing and created something beautiful in 2 hours. Victor testified about the letters Richard had kept hidden, about the manipulation, about watching Richard humiliate me at that dinner. I've known Clara Ara for over 30 years, Victor said, and the woman I saw that night was a shadow of who she used to be. Richard didn't just control her finances, he controlled her identity. During Pierce's cross-examination, he tried to paint Victor as the other man, the home wrecker. You and Mrs. Whitmore were romantically involved in college, correct? Yes. And you're involved now? We're friends. Just friends? You expect this court to believe that you've inserted yourself into this divorce out of pure friendship? I inserted myself because I watched a man abuse someone I care about. Friendship is enough reason for that. Pierce smirked. How convenient. And I'm sure the fact that she's about to be a wealthy divorcee has nothing to do with your concern. Victor's expression went cold. If you're suggesting I'm here for money, you don't know me at all. I own 3 restaurants and have more than enough. I'm here because Richard Whitmore is a bully who spent 30 years tearing down a brilliant woman to make himself feel powerful. The judge actually smiled at that. On the final day, both sides gave closing arguments. Pierce painted me as a gold digger who trapped Richard with a pregnancy and was now trying to cash out. Sarah painted Richard as a controller who'd systematically isolated and diminished his wife for 3 decades. The evidence shows a clear pattern, Sarah said. Richard Whitmore didn't marry Clara. He acquired her, and for 30 years he treated her like property. He controlled her money, her choices, her identity, and when she finally found the courage to leave, he tried to take everything from her, including her son. She turned to face Richard. But here's what Mr. Whitmore didn't count on. Clara Whitmore is stronger than he ever gave her credit for. She walked away with nothing because nothing was better than staying with him. And that, Your Honor, tells you everything you need to know about this marriage. The judge took 2 days to deliberate. When the verdict came, I was in the gallery with Victor and Sarah. Richard sat on the other side with his lawyers, looking confident. Judge Morrison read the decision without emotion. Having reviewed the evidence and testimony, this court finds that Richard Whitmore engaged in a pattern of financial abuse and control throughout the marriage. The hiding of assets in offshore accounts and shell companies constitutes fraud. Mrs. Whitmore is entitled to 50% of all marital assets, including those Mr. Whitmore attempted to conceal. Richard's face went white. Additionally, Mr. Whitmore will pay spousal support in the amount of $8,000 per month for a period of 10 years. He will also be responsible for Mrs. Whitmore's legal fees. The courtroom erupted. Sarah grabbed my hand and squeezed. I couldn't breathe. 50%, $8,000 a month, legal fees covered. I'd won. Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting. Richard pushed past them without comment. I stopped on the steps. Mrs. Whitmore, how does it feel to win? I looked at the cameras. at the people watching, at the city that had seen me kneel and was now seeing me stand. It feels like breathing, I said. That night, Victor took me to his restaurant, closed to the public, just us and the kitchen staff making whatever they wanted. You did it, he said, pouring wine. We did it. No, you did this. Sarah and I just helped. I looked at the wine glass, at the man across from me, at the life I was about to step into. I don't know what happens now, I said. What do you want to happen? I want to paint, actually paint, not hide it in a garage. I want to build something that's mine. I want to figure out who Clara is when she's not someone's wife or mother or obligation. Anything else? I met his eyes. I want to fall in love with you again, but slowly, without pressure or expectations or anyone telling me what I should feel. He smiled. I can work with that. We talked until midnight, about everything and nothing, about the past we couldn't change and the future we might build. When he dropped me off at my apartment, he kissed me on the forehead. Take your time, Ira, I'm not going anywhere. 3 weeks later, I got a call from an unknown number. Mom? My heart stopped. Ethan? Yeah, it's me. I sat down on my couch, phone pressed to my ear like a lifeline. How are you? I asked, confused, angry, working through it. I understand. I read the trial transcripts, all of them. I closed my eyes. Okay. I didn't know about the money, about him controlling everything. I thought you were happy that you'd chosen that life. I did choose it, but not because I was happy, because I was scared. I know that now, and I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. You were a kid. You weren't supposed to see it. He was quiet for a moment. I talked to Richard after the verdict. What did he say? That you'd poisoned me against him, that you'd made him the villain to justify your affair with Victor. There is no affair. Victor and I are just, I know, Mom, I know, because I also talked to Victor multiple times, actually. That surprised me. You did? He's been calling me every week since the engagement dinner, just checking in, not pushing, not trying to be my dad, just there. I felt something crack open in my chest. He told me about the letters Richard kept, about how you tried to reach him when you were pregnant, about how Richard bought them from his roommate. He told you all that? Yeah. And he said something that stuck with me. He said you spent 30 years making impossible choices in impossible situations, and that the fact you're still standing is proof of how strong you are. I couldn't speak. I'm not ready to forgive everything, Ethan continued, but I'm ready to try, if you are. Yes, I said through tears. Yes, I'm ready. Good, because I want you to meet someone. Melissa? No, we broke up. My heart sank. Ethan, I'm so sorry. Don't be. She gave me an ultimatum, her or you, and I realized anyone who makes me choose between them and my mother isn't someone I want to marry. You chose me. I chose us, the actual us, not the lie Richard built, not the perfect family Melissa wanted, the messy, complicated, real version. I cried so hard I had to put the phone down. When I picked it back up, Ethan was still there. Mom, you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. I'm really okay. We met for lunch the next week at a small cafe, nothing fancy, just us and sandwiches and the awkward work of rebuilding. He asked about the gallery, about my painting, about what I was going to do with the settlement money. I'm buying a studio, I said, a real one, with good light and space to work. That's great, Mom, really great. What about you? Are you staying at Richard's firm? He shook his head. I quit. I'm taking some time to figure out what I actually want to do, not what Richard planned for me. That's brave. I learned it from you. We talked for 2 hours about the past, about the future, about the fact that healing wasn't going to be linear or easy. I'm seeing a therapist, he said. She's helping me work through everything. That's good. That's really good. You should try it too. I nodded. I am, twice a week. We paid the bill and walked out together. On the sidewalk, Ethan stopped. Can I hug you? He asked. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He pulled me into his arms, and for the first time in months, I felt like a mother again. Not perfect, not fixed, but there. 6 months later, I had my first art show at Helen's Gallery. 20 new pieces, all of them painted in my studio, in my time, on my terms. The opening was packed. Friends I hadn't seen in years, people from the neighborhood, strangers who'd read about the divorce trial and wanted to see the woman who'd won. Victor was there, standing near the back. We'd been dating, slowly, carefully, for 3 months. No moving in together, no grand declarations. Just dinner twice a week, and conversations that lasted until dawn. It was enough, more than enough. Ethan came too, with a date, a woman named Cara who worked in non-profit, and looked at him like he hung the moon. "Mom, this is incredible," he said, standing in front of my favorite piece, the one I titled Doorway, a woman standing at a threshold, half in shadow, half in light, not quite in either world, but choosing which way to step. "You painted this?" Cara asked. "Last month," I said. "It's powerful, like she's about to make the biggest decision of her life." "She already did," I said. "This is her living with it." Ethan looked at me, really looked at me. "I'm proud of you," he said. Those 4 words meant more than the settlement, more than the apartment or the studio or the freedom. My son was proud of me. That night, after everyone left and Helen was locking up, Victor walked me home. "So," he said, "how does it feel to be a successful artist?" "Terrifying, exhilarating, real." We stopped outside my building. "I have a question," he said. "Okay. Do you remember that night in college when I asked you to marry me?" "Of course." "You said yes." "I did." He pulled a small box from his pocket. My breath caught. "I'm not asking you to marry me," he said quickly. "Not yet, not until you're ready, but I want you to have this." He opened the box. Inside was a ring. Simple, elegant, the same one he'd bought 27 years ago with money he didn't have. "You kept it?" I whispered. "I kept everything. The letters you wrote that I never got, the photos from college, the receipt from our first dinner. I kept it all because I couldn't let go of you." "Victor, I know you need time. I know you need to figure out who you are outside of Richard, outside of being a mother, outside of everything. And I'll wait as long as it takes. But when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I want you to know I'm still here. I'm still asking." I looked at the ring, at this man who'd waited 30 years, who'd watched me kneel and helped me stand, who'd never once asked me to be anything except myself. "Ask me again in a year," I said. He smiled. "Deal." I wore the ring on a chain around my neck, a promise to myself more than to him, a promise that I'd keep choosing me, that I'd keep standing, that I'd never kneel for anyone again. Because here's what I learned. Love can't save you if you don't save yourself first. Money can't buy freedom if you don't know what freedom means. And family isn't who you're related to, it's who shows up when you're on the floor and helps you remember how to stand. Richard tried to appeal the verdict. It was denied. He sold the house and moved to Arizona. I heard he's dating someone half his age who probably has no idea what she's signing up for. I don't care. He's not my problem anymore. Melissa sent me a Facebook message apologizing for trying to buy me off. I didn't respond. Some apologies don't deserve acknowledgement. My mother called once, asking if I'd share some of the settlement with her. I said no. She hasn't called since. Some bridges are better burned. The studio I bought became my sanctuary. I painted every day, sometimes for hours, sometimes for just a few minutes. It didn't matter. What mattered was that I was creating something that was entirely mine. Helen offered me a partnership in the gallery. I said yes. Ethan and Cara got engaged. They asked me to help plan the wedding. I cried for an hour straight, then said yes to that too. A year and 3 days after Victor gave me the ring, I wore it on my finger instead of my neck. We got married at City Hall on a Tuesday afternoon. Just us, Ethan, Cara, Sarah, and Helen. No grand ceremony, no expensive dress, no crowd of people who didn't matter. Afterward, we went to Victor's restaurant and ate pasta with burnt garlic. It was perfect. Not because everything was fixed. Not because the past 30 years disappeared. But because I'd chosen it, freely, completely, without fear. That's what freedom looks like. Not the absence of struggle, not the promise of a perfect future, just the ability to choose your own path and walk it with your head up. I'm 49 years old. I have a studio, a gallery, a husband who sees me, a son who's learning to forgive me, and a life that's entirely my own. Is it perfect? No. Do I still have days where I wake up and wonder if I made the right choice? Yes. But here's the difference. Now, when I doubt, I don't disappear. I don't kneel. I don't let someone else decide what I'm worth. I stand, I breathe, I create. And that after everything is enough. More than enough. It's everything.